Hi, I'm Michael Anderson, and I teach leadership. And the why I got started in this is because I had a very interesting leadership journey myself. I started as a programmer. I worked my way up the corporate ladder, and then I started my first software company in California. And I realized that I was out of my depth as far as leadership. I understood management, I understood business, I understood the technology, but I didn't understand leadership. And I'll tell you, that caused a lot of issues for me. It caused a lot of problems in my business. We stopped growing and scaling, but also personally, emotionally, mentally, and just for my own well-being, there was just so much pressure and so much stress that I realized that I had to fix this leadership thing to really get where I wanted to go in my career and personally. And so that's why I put my sets on evolving myself as a leader, and whatever I did must have worked because my company, one of my companies ended up on the Inc. 5000 list. We won the #1 best place to work, and I won Social Entrepreneur of the Year. And that was externally, but internally, I was finally having fun. I was finally getting this leadership thing. Well, as I was going through my journey, I figured, what do I need to do to get to where I want to get to as a leader? And one of the things that I did is I earned a master's degree in psychology because I really wanted to understand what made me tick and what made other people tick. And that was really what made the biggest change in my life as a leader. And there's a lot of leadership experts out there. And what I do is I teach evidence-based leadership, meaning it is based on my experiences, but it's also based on psychology. And I also earned a neuroscience certificate. So that's what clients really love is that what I'm teaching is about the core of how we work and how we think and how we act. And that's why when I teach a lot of the mindset leadership type of content, people get a lot out of it. And that's the reason that Salesforce, Stanford University has brought me in to work with their startup ecosystem. Salesforce, Microsoft, SAP, they've all brought me in to level up their leaders because of the evidence-based leadership. When all this craziness happened in March 2020, I realized that everybody's being forced to work virtually. And I had the fortune of working virtually for over the last 20 years. In fact, my company that won #1 best place to work it worked in a hybrid environment. So 2/3 of our employees were virtual. And I had a lot to share because of that experience. And that is why I wrote the book, which became a bestseller, Leading in the Next Normal. And it is about leading hybrid and virtual teams. It's about leading through all this change. And things have changed since I came out with this in the later part of 2020, because right now what companies are looking at, because companies had to make a lot of very, very fast decisions and put a lot of temporary measures into place with people working in lockdown and working remotely. But now what's happening is they need to form a longer term strategy. And a lot of companies are realizing this is a massively strategic decision that they're making, what I call the workforce strategy. Are you going to let people work from home? Are you going to recruit people from all over the world? Do you have hybrid teams? And really, what does that look like? And what's the implementation methodology for putting that through? So you have to make the decisions, you have considerations, you have the communications, and how do you make sure that you are serving your employees? Because also there's a massive amount, people are talking about the great resignation, where people are losing a lot of their workforce because people realize they can work from anywhere and they might not like the type of workforce strategy the company's putting in. In addition, a lot of companies are under real recruiting. They're having problems recruiting and getting talented people in. So there's a lot of really strategic forces working for and against companies right now, and they know they need to make these proper strategic decisions now for the future of their company. One of the things that a lot of leaders come and they ask me is they say, how do I motivate a virtual or a hybrid workforce? How do I get people engaged? And I can tell you that everything that you've done in the office with your team can be done virtually or in a hybrid environment. You just have to be more intentional about it. So there's so many different things that you need to do, especially as far as things like culture, creativity, onboarding, that might have happened more naturally in the office that you really have to plan for and have a strategy for when you are in a virtual or hybrid environment. And that might be as simple as things as when somebody is onboarding, make sure that they're having a lot of conversation with their peers, and make sure that they have a mentor that is in maybe the same department that can answer the questions for them. Because when they were in the office and they had a problem or a question, they would just get up and walk over to whoever's at their desk and ask. They can't do that anymore. And so being a new employee, you want to make sure that they feel welcome. And this is also a great time to train them in your values and your culture. So if in your onboarding procedure, if you haven't allocated significant time and energy into really letting people know what the culture of your company is, how to communicate, what is unique about your organization, and what are the boundaries? How do you really make sure that everybody is working on the same things in the same direction? Really put that in your onboarding process. Creativity, there's different things you can do about creativity. There's different things you can do about networking, but you have to make time for them when people aren't in the same physical location. And it takes a little bit of creativity and it takes a little bit of best practices, but you can really recreate everything that you had in the office in a virtual or hybrid environment. Emotional intelligence is a really interesting thing when it comes to leadership, because I think there's a lot of confusion around it. To me, when I look back in my leadership career, because as I told you, I struggled as a leader and then things started to come together with me, people ask me what was the one biggest change. And through my master's in psychology, what happened is I really understood who I was, and I got comfortable with that. You could call that self-esteem, you could call that self-confidence. And it really was me bringing my authentic and vulnerable self to work. And there's so much talked about with authenticity and vulnerability, but people don't understand that you're authentic and vulnerable when you do understand who you are, when you are comfortable with yourself, because then you become authentic and you can become vulnerable from a healthy place. And when we talk about emotional intelligence, when you mix having a comfort level with yourself with mindfulness, then things slow down and you're aware of what's going on within you. And when you're communicating to somebody, you're aware of what's going on within them. And your communications, your conversations, your presence takes on a whole different meaning. So to me, what emotional intelligence is, it's getting comfortable with yourself, that self-esteem, it's bringing mindfulness in, and it's really connecting with people on an emotionally healthy level, which helps in so much around performance. It helps with relationships. It helps people respect you. It helps you earn people's loyalty. And really, that's what we want as a leader, to get everybody on board, to empower them, to really trust them. And that's where you're going to get your high performance. I love what's talking about what's next for me, because what's happened over the last couple of years is people have really been coming to me because they want to learn more about the mindset of leadership. There's not a lot of people that really focus again on the psychology and the neuroscience, and really not necessarily about management, but about leadership. How do you have that confidence? How do you have that presence? How do you really step into the role of leader? I mean, as leaders, we take on so much responsibility, so much pressure, but we often aren't given the mindset tools to really thrive in that role. And so that's really what I'm going to focus on. My next book is tentatively titled, don't tell anybody, it's tentatively titled Leadership Mindset 2.0. And it's really going to be the process that leaders need to go through, really to be their best selves, to keep evolving, to have that unshakable confidence, that resilience, that presence from a really compassionate place. Because I find the best leaders have that empathy, have that compassion, have that vulnerability, all from a very healthy place. And so that it's going to walk through that process. And it's the same process that I talk about in my keynote speeches and I'm doing training on right now.